Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beneath the Surface. Today we'll be discussing what is jihad, and joining us on the show is an Islamic lecturer, SayidZafarAbbas. Thank you very much for joining us, Sayyid.
Thank you.
As jihad and Islam is mainly been in the media, and many different groups understand jihad to be different, especially the West today. They believe jihad to mainly be a militant action. What is jihad according to the militant perspective before we move on to the other aspects of jihad?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. The terrorist groups, for example, who carry out activities throughout the world use the term jihad to mean attacking non-Muslims indiscriminately. They use it to mean that they can attack Muslims as well. They use it to defend and defy all kinds of countries and laws, and saying that they don't apply to them. They say that by doing all of these things that they are defending the honor of Islam and the Holy Prophet of Islam.
But in reality they're not, because they're actually affecting Muslims as a whole in comparison to actually, according to them, defending Islam.
In reality, of course, jihad is not those things. In reality, jihad comes from the word juhud, which means to struggle, or to strive. And there is many types of jihad. The hadith inform us about jihad bil lisan, jihad of the tongue, jihad bil qalam, jihad by the pen. And it also talks about jihad bil sayf, or jihad of fighting as well, or qital in some narratives. However, with all these kinds of jihad, there are conditions attached to them. As with all acts of worship, we consider jihad to be an act of worship, an act of ibadah, and therefore conditions are attached to it. As far as the jihad with regards to fighting the enemy is concerned, then we consider that to be centralized authority in Islam. We consider the Holy Prophet of Islam or the Aimma alayhi salatu wasalam as the authority who have the capability and the possibility of ordering people to go for jihad. And in the absence of either the Holy Prophet of Islam or the Holy Infallible, then there is no call for jihad in that sense of the word. In addition, from the life of the Holy Prophet of Islam, we see that the Holy Prophet of Islam never went out and indiscriminately killed non-Muslim people. And he certainly, even those non-Muslim people who attacked him, he never killed anybody who was a Muslim without any reason. And therefore, the actions of those who indiscriminately go out and kill both non-Muslims and Muslims is certainly not from the example of the Holy Prophet of Islam. You know, the Holy Prophet of Islam never in his lifetime carried out these kind of actions, and these actions could not be justified from the Holy Prophet of Islam's life. As far as their justifications are concerned, then yes, then they use certain verses of Holy Quran which are taken out of context, or they do not read the whole verse, they take a part of the verse to justify killing of innocent people.
Sorry.
Yes.
But there are verses in the Quran which speak of jihad and speak of the militant aspect of jihad. Can you just explain that to us? Because many newspapers tend to focus on these specific verses, of course not looking at the context and everything. So if you give us more detail on that.
So, for example, the vast majority of the verses which talk about offensive jihad, or jihad which is to defend the religion of Islam, are mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah. Surah At-Tawbah has a particular context of revelation. The whole surah itself is revealed at a time whence the Holy Prophet of Islam has made a peace treaty with the Meccans. When they violate the peace treaty, every single condition of the peace treaty has been violated. Once every condition of the peace treaty has been violated, in the 9th year after Hijrah, Surah At-Tawbah is revealed. Surah At-Tawbah is revealed, and compared to all the other surahs in the Holy Quran, Surah At-Tawbah has a very different tone and a very different way of addressing people. It is the only surah in the Holy Quran which does not begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and that is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that what is coming in this surah, there's no mercy for those who have betrayed their trust. And where the attack on those people and the call for fighting is concerned, it is to do with those people who violated the peace treaty. It is not a general call for going out and killing all non-Muslims in any case. It is specifically to do with those people who violated the peace treaty. So Islam is saying that this is how important Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers trust to be. That if you have signed a peace treaty and you have created a trust and a pact, and then you violate that, then the consequences of that will be severe, to show that this is how important a trust is. You know, this is the value of an agreement in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't make an agreement, that's a different issue. But once you've made an agreement and then you violate that agreement, then the consequences will be severe, to make an example for those coming afterwards, so that they know the importance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His religion have for making an agreement. That's one thing. The other thing is that even after that, so even after the fact that the revelation of Surah At-Tawbah and in the conquest of Mecca, for example, and the Holy Prophet returns to Mecca, and some of the companions say to the Holy Prophet of Islam, هَذَا يَوْمُ الْإِنْتِقَامِ, this is the day of revenge. We suffered when we lived in Mecca. Now today we have 10,000 people with us, and the Meccans will be overawed with our presence and with our numbers, and therefore we will take revenge from them. And the Holy Prophet of Islam corrected him and said, هَذَا يَوْمُ الْمَرْحَمَةِ, this is the day of mercy, because I am the Prophet of mercy. So even in a time where the Holy Prophet of Islam was in a more powerful position, there was no doubt that he could have sought revenge if he chose to do so. He affirmed that he is the Prophet of mercy and said, today is the day of mercy because I am the Prophet of mercy. And so even in that situation, which was the most ideal and best situation for the Holy Prophet of Islam to take revenge or to indiscriminately kill people, if that had been the command of the religion of Islam. But on that day, the Holy Prophet of Islam, in this perfect opportunity, did not go out and indiscriminately kill people. To show us that when you're in a position of power, when you're in a position of authority, when you have gained superiority over the enemy, then don't go out and indiscriminately kill people. Because your mercy and your character and the way that you act with them will be far more effective than going out and killing them. So therefore, even in the presence of the Holy Prophet, and even in the presence of the A'immah alayhimu salatu wasalam, they did not go out and indiscriminately kill people. Whereas what we are saying is, in this time, there is neither the command of the Holy Prophet, nor is there a command of an Imam, and nor is there any reason for, even in those times, to go out and indiscriminately kill people, to go out and take the law into your own hands. The religion of Islam has made everything to follow a due process. If somebody has committed a crime, for example, if we take this example of the people who made the cartoons, if they've committed a crime, then they should be tried, and evidence should be presented, and then they should be able to defend themselves, and then if they are found guilty, then the punishment should come onto them. But without this whole process, to go straight to the punishment is not something the religion of Islam will condone, because it is taking the law into your own hands, and religion of Islam will not consider that to be legitimate in any way, shape or form.
But then with the surah, with the holy surah, Surah At-Tawbah, there are many verses which speak of it, and you're saying that it's mainly for that time. Can't people today compare their situation with that? For example, in Iraq, Syria or Palestine, let's say, if they were to look at the situation that's taking place, can't they kind of like say, oh, because, for example, we're being attacked, we have to go out and jihad fi sabilillah? Or they can say that because these people are not, followers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to kill them.
Certainly that people will read certain situations in the Holy Quran and think that they are in a similar situation. As far as it comes to defending themselves, their family, their lives, their honor, these things do not require any kind of commandment. It is an obligation upon every Muslim to defend their life, to defend their family, to defend their honor, if that is coming under attack. So this is the key. If a Muslim is being attacked, whether their life is being attacked, their honor is being attacked, or their family are being attacked, then there's an obligation upon them to defend themselves. You don't need an ayah of the Holy Quran for that. You don't need any command from any infallible for that. However, what we are talking about is when we are talking about going out and initiating a war without anyone having attacked. In this situation, it is imperative for there to be a command of a ma'soom before that kind of attack can take place. For sure, defending oneself is an obligation, and under any legal system, a person will not be penalized for going out and defending themselves if the force that they have used is to defend themselves. Even in modern Western legal systems, for a person to use force to defend themselves, if they go to court and they are able to prove that they were only doing it in order to defend themselves, then they will not be punished. In that situation, of course, there's no question that a Muslim has to defend themselves, wherever they are, whether they are in a Muslim land or a non-Muslim land. If they personally are being attacked, or their family or their honor, then they go out and defend themselves. What we're talking about is we're saying that when it's coming to announcing a jihad fi sabilillah, that has to be done by a ma'soom who will interpret the Holy Quran in the way that is suitable for that particular time and day and age. It is not the role of every single individual to go out and interpret the Holy Quran. The Holy Prophet of Islam has left us with the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in order for the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to explain to us the Quran. There will be different situations, there will be different times, there will be different circumstances, and in those circumstances the Quran will be understood, and certain parts of the Holy Quran will be understood in different ways. That is the need for there to be a ma'soom, for there to be an infallible. And that is what is key in this situation. So when it comes to these verses about jihad, when it comes to interpreting the Holy Quran, then we have to go towards how did the Aimma alayhi do this. And when we look back and we see that Aimma alayhi went through difficult times, and yet they still didn't give any command for jihad. That means that this is not something to be taken lightly. It's not something for me to think, oh, I've been attacked or my family has been attacked, so let me do an announced jihad because the Holy Quran says this. No, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam spent 14 years in prison. He didn't give an announcement for jihad. Imam Hussain alayhi salam had to go to Karbala, so on and so forth. All these Aimma alayhi salam went through all these difficult times, yet they didn't give any call for jihad in that sense. So after the Battle of Karbala, there's no call for jihad. That means that really this is very something that is very, very seriously, that every Imam thinks out in accordance with their circumstances and then makes an announcement for jihad. And it is not something that any person can read a few verses of Quran and decide that, I have to announce jihad and therefore this is jihad.
As jihad is a very wide topic, we spoke about it in the military sense, but when we focus on, because you said there's jihad of the pen and the jihad of the tongue, can you explain both to us, please?
So as we said, jihad is to struggle or to strive, and therefore there's jihad of the pen and there is jihad of the tongue. We have various verses in the Holy Quran, and we also have very strong hadith from Aimma alayhi salam, which talk about the importance of both of these jihad. For example, that Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the way to Karbala mentions in a very famous saying that if a person knows of an oppressive ruler and he does not stand against the oppressive ruler and speak out against the oppressive ruler, then on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider him as on the same line as the person who oppressed, because the person remained silent. For example, in Ziyarat Warth and in Ziyarat Ashura and other Ziyarat of Muhammad, we say that لعن الله قتلتكم ولعن الله ظلمتكم ولعن الله سمعتكم بذلك فرضيت به. On those who killed you, and on those who oppressed you, and those who heard about your killing, and they remained pleased with it. They remained silent. They didn't do anything about it. They didn't speak out against it. So this is all indications towards speaking out against justice, and that is a form of jihad. That a person speaks out, at least speaks out against injustices. I am not in agreement with what this person is doing. Whether that speaking out is actually speaking out, whether it's using the various forms of media that we have, in whichever case that might be. And similarly to do with bil qalam, that if a person writes against injustice that is happening, to create awareness and say that I am away from this injustice, I am away from this. And the Holy Quran, very interesting verse in Surah An-Nisa, says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like the speaking of evil, so that people know about evil, so that the evil is spread amongst the people, except in the case of a person who's been oppressed. The person who's been oppressed is not only allowed, but is encouraged to speak out against the oppressor. Because in a normal situation, that too would be speaking about evil. But in this case, Allah makes an exception and says that إِلَّا مَا ظُلِمْ, except the person who has been oppressed, that person can speak out against oppression, and Imam ﷺ says that person has to speak out against oppression. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider that person to be in the same, and will be mahshur with the person who's done the oppression. So in this situation, these kinds of jihad do not require any ma'soom to intervene. These kinds of jihads are jihad that we should be doing on a daily basis, that we are doing. That is the very least that we can do.
As we all have access to a pen, it's not really a pen, it's more social media, where we can actually spread our message and our perspective. Because you said that we have to mainly speak about the one who's being oppressed. In what way would it have to be? In the sense that we speak badly or negatively of the actions that an individual has done, or that we speak up for the people that are being oppressed? What is the best way to go about this?
I think it has to be both. I think we have to speak out for the oppressed, but in doing so, we will have to tell people about what kind of oppression has taken place. So we will have to say that this Group X has committed oppression against Group Y, and this is why these actions of Group X are wrong. We are away and we do bara'a, we disassociate from the actions of Group X against the actions of Group Y. Now, when it comes to speaking out about Group Y, it's not necessary that Group Y has to be Muslim or Group Y has to be followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. It is our responsibility to speak out against all oppression, and that would be the real, jihad of the pen or of the tongue, that we speak out against all oppression, because it's oppression. In that every human being has the right to live without oppression, has the right to live peacefully, regardless of what they believe in. As far as what their punishment is concerned, as far as what their hisab is concerned, then that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's responsibility. That is not the human being's responsibility to decide that because this person is not Muslim or because this person is not following Ahlul Bayt, we can go and oppress that person. No. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's responsibility, and therefore we have to make sure that we clearly and are very clear about the fact that yes, this person or this group of people are not Muslims or they are not followers of Ahlul Bayt, but we are not speaking out because we agree with them. We're speaking out because we don't agree with oppression. We're speaking out because we think that oppression against anyone, or injustice against anyone, as Martin Luther King famously said, injustice against anyone is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice, justice everywhere. That just because injustice is happening there and it's not affecting me today, or it's happening to a group of people that I don't like, then what's to say that that will stop there and it will not come to me one day? And if I speak out against them, then maybe there's a chance that that group might speak out against the injustice that happens to me tomorrow. But the principle is important. The principle is that injustice against anyone is not something that we can accept silently. We have to speak out against.
But then when we are to speak out against, because now it's become easier, let's say, when writing an article, for example, or writing just on your status, or tweeting about how you actually feel about a certain situation. But sometimes when going into full detail of how oppressive a politician, for example, may be, or a group of people may be, it kind of puts the individual at threat. What would be the situation or the ruling for this person if they are threatened?
In the situation that, yes, we have to speak out against injustice, without a shadow of doubt. But also in the situation that religion of Islam says that it is obligatory to protect and save my life. I cannot do something that will put my life into danger. Therefore, in this case, we have to be wise. As I mentioned previously, a believer cannot be foolish. We have to be wise. We have to say that, yes, we have to rationally approach the situation in such a way that, yes, coming back to what we discussed when we were talking about the cartoons. This is my freedom of speech to speak about X, Y, Z thing. Yes, we will not, there's no necessity even in this case for us to speak about a particular individual, because this is the way that laws work, is that if an individual feels that they've been attacked, then they can sue that person. But there's no need for us to focus on a particular individual, and usually it is not a particular individual who is responsible anyway. The way that the system works is that it is a whole system which is responsible. It's not an individual who is responsible. Maybe the individual might be the face, but the individual is not responsible by themselves. And therefore there's no need, especially if that will put my life in danger, or it will make my life difficult, for me to mention a particular individual. And rather it's better for me to mention a system and say that it is the action and not the individual, and not even all the people. It is the action that is being carried out which I am disassociating myself from. It is not the people. I don't have a personal issue with this particular person. I don't know this person. But what I have an issue with is with the actions that are being carried out in this person's name or in this group's name. And that is what is meant by speaking out against oppression. That is what the Holy Prophet of Islam did. And indeed, he forgave people who acted in very horrible ways, to show that it was not the person, but it was the action that was the problem.
When we look at jihad al-nafs, as that's the most important jihad, how can we as Muslims living in the West develop our jihad and make sure that, inshallah, we are going in the right way, on the right path?
So of course the jihad of the nafs, or to control one's soul and one's desire and appetite, is the most difficult one, and thus has the most reward. The way to look at it, one way to look at it, is that when the nafs desires something and we strive against that desire, we remind ourselves that it is short-term pleasure versus long-term punishment. Amir al-Mu'minin in a very beautiful saying says that, remember that the pleasure that arises from the sin is temporary, but the consequences are permanent. So it's imperative that we realize that, and we say that, yes, while the nafs is taking me towards a particular thing which is desirable for me, or it's pleasurable, or I like it, but the consequences of that will be permanent, and the consequences will be dire. So, and gradually the nafs is trained in this way. It will take time for the nafs to realize this, and there's always temptation that is there, especially in the society that we're living in, and therefore it's imperative that we try and avoid those places where the temptation might be increased.
But then with the temptations, they're really everywhere. If we were to look at, if we're watching a normal channel, basic channel, it's whether it's advert of 30 seconds, it's there. If we're to be walking on the streets, it's there. If we were to take, public transport, it's all around us with billboards and videos, etc. Magazines, the Metro, for example, which we all take just to read because, it's free, it's all there. So however much we do say, and inshallah, I pray that the majority of us, all of us even, do have that strength to, teach ourselves not to give in to these temptations. But just sometimes, looking, isn't that just like a wrong, even though, of course, you then remind yourself that you shouldn't. But just that, act of looking.
No doubt that as far as the jurisprudential is concerned, that yes, the first look is allowed and then the second look is haram. But just like we talk about our muscles, for example, in the physical sense, that we have to train the muscles. The first day you go to the gym and you work out, your body is all aching, and then when you continue to go to the gym, then the body becomes used to, because the muscles become trained. So in that same way, from a spiritual sense, the nafs is also a muscle, and it just needs to be trained. And the more that you train it, the more that it will go away from that temptation and from that sin. I'll end with a beautiful saying from Amir al-Mu'minin again, when he was asked about why doesn't he commit sin, and he said that he pointed towards the rubbish heap, and he said that if I told you to eat out of that rubbish heap, would you eat out of it? And the man said no. And the Imam says that is what sin looks like to me. I see the reality of sin, whereas you are deceived by what Iblis or Shaitan makes as a deception in front of the sin, as what he decorates the sin to be like, the glittering and the dazzling over it. So we pray that inshallah we're able to look past the dazzling of the Shaitan and see the reality of what is the evil behind it. And inshallah, if we see and we realize and we know the reality behind it, then we'll be able to, it will give us the strength to stay away from the sin as well.
Thank you very much, Sayyidina, for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching Beneath the Surface. See you next time.